Hey guys, Sko here. Welcome back to X-Men Explained. Today we're going to talk about Rogue. And we're going to start with her alter ego side. She's got one of our extra card situations, which interacts with the rules as written a little oddly. So she has a setup effect that says set your touched upgrade aside, which technically happens very late in the setup. So to play exactly according to the rules as written, you should shuffle this card into your deck, and at the point for hero setup abilities, somehow this finds it and sets it aside. As you can see, I have it sleeved in a different color from the rest of my deck because I've given up on playing these things by the book. Really, this ability, I suggest you just resolve it at step 1 of setup. So at the same time that you put Anna Marie into play in step 1 of setup, also take touched and set it aside. And that's that. She has a force response after you change to this form, set touched aside. That seems to also, it refers to touched by name, so you can find it in whatever area it's at. On her hero side, she has the main way you're going to deal with touched. Action, attach touched to another character. You gain each of the attacked character's traits until the end of the round. This is limit once per round. Couple things to note is the traits that you gain stay throughout the end of the round, even if the character dies or if touch stops being attached to them. So that can somehow be useful. She also has a forced response after the player phase begins, find touched and set it aside. So this is the only one of her 3 abilities that uses the word find, and it's given a specific definition in her rules insert, which means you search all the in-play and out-of-play areas for the card and set it aside. We don't know why only one ability uses find. It doesn't seem like any of the 3 work differently. We have no idea why this is worded like differently than the other side of her card at the moment, but yeah, they've referenced touched by name, so they have the superpower to search it out of any area like. Touched itself is an upgrade that cannot be played. It doesn't have a cost, but it's not permanent, so it can end up in your discard pile when the character that it's attached to is defeated or leaves play. So that's one place you might be grabbing it out of with her ability. It has a constant ability that if if touched is attached to certain card types, Rogue will gain an ability. This is only true of whatever touched is actively connected to. So skin contact creates a lasting effect until the end of the round where she gains traits, and even if touched moves around, she actually just accumulates all of those traits. But touched is only ever actively attached to one thing at a time, so only one of touched's abilities is ever going to be true. The main way you're going to get touched onto more than one character at a time is a card I want to talk about, Energy Transfer. It is a hero action, attach touched to a character other than Rogue and deal 2 damage to that character. Cost arrow, heal 2 damage from Rogue and ready her. You gain each of the attached character's traits until the end of the round. So, it's not immediately clear why this is a cost arrow, at least not with our current way of dealing and taking damage. You can deal damage to a character even if it doesn't take it. So the character doesn't need to have 2 health remaining. It can be, I guess we don't know exactly how tough interacts with this because we still don't know exactly how it's going to work. But the main deal is you attach touch to a character other than Rogue. You're going to deal 2 damage to that character, and Rogue will retain the traits that she absorbed from the first touched target, even if that does not exist. And also don't get too tripped up on the difference in wording between Energy Transfer and Rogue. Energy Transfer is an ability that is not printed on a character, and that character is not named Rogue. So it needs to say attached to a character other than Rogue and deal 2 damage. This does not mean that Rogue's skin contact has the ability to attach to herself if it starts on someone else. She could say the exact same thing. It could say attached, touched to a character other than Rogue. They just looked at that and said, another character says exactly the same thing and it's shorter. So you are never going to have touched attached to your own identity. She has a defense card, which almost always are tricky to understand, so I figured I would talk about this one. Bulletproof Belle is a hero interrupt with a defense label. It says, when an enemy with touched attached to it attacks, prevent all damage from that attack, and gain a tough status card. So this timing, the trigger condition, when an enemy with touch attached to it attacks, being an interrupt to when an enemy attacks means this is at the very beginning of the enemy attacks process. So it is before even they get a boost card. This is at the same timing as when they initiate an attack. This is the same timing as Gambit Staff. I just recorded that video. So it's way at the beginning of an attack, before anyone else can possibly defend, and before you see the boost card. This being a defense will make Rogue the defender of that attack, which means after this card, no other characters can defend against that attack by exhausting to defend or any other way. Rogue can, when the time comes, exhaust to defend, but there is no reason to do that because you will prevent all damage from that attack and you will gain a tough status card, which will not be immediately popped by that attack because that damage is prevented. So you get a total of 2 blocks out of 2 attack blocks out of a Bulletproof Belle, which is awesome. And the first one that you use it on, you can yoink that attack from the villain attacking any character or any player's engaged minion. And then the last card that we're going to talk about is maybe one of her coolest, Superpower Adaptation. So this is a card that is super, super fun in multiplayer. It lets you pick up cards from other players' decks, events in particular, and you get to use them, which is some of the most fun you can have with Rogue. What it says is, hero action. If touched is attached to a friendly character, search its owner's discard pile for an event that belongs to the same classification as that character, identity specific, aspect, or basic, and add that event to your hand. So I suggest checking out the rule called classification, which defines what that is. Basically, classification refers to kind of the word in the bottom right corner that something belongs to. And there are some general categories, and the 3 ones that friendly characters could possibly belong to is an identity specific, which is true of identities and their signature allies, or aspect, which would be a character from any of the 4 aspects, or basic, which is not an aspect. So a couple important things to keep in mind about this. If touched is attached to a friendly identity, you can use Superpower Adaptation to grab identity-specific events from their discard pile. Touched will never be attached to Rogue's identity. So the only way to Superpower Adaptation your own identity-specific events would be to have touched attached to her identity-specific Gambit ally. That's the only way to do that. So it is fully impossible to do that if there is a Gambit hero at the table, and it's quite rare in the first place. If touched is attached to an aspect ally, then you can use Superpower Adaptation to search the controlling player's discard pile for an aspect event. And the aspects don't need to match. It just needs to be attached to an aspect ally, and you pull out an aspect event. So in the case of heroes that can play a variety of aspects, allies or heroes, and events like Cyclops or Adam Warlock or Gamora, there's some mixing and matching you can possibly do, just as long as each one is an aspect. Neither can be basic. And if touch is attached to a basic ally, then the only option Superpower Adaptation has is to grab basic events from that player's discard pile. So I hope that has made this somewhat clear. If there's anything I've missed, please let me know and ask me a question in the comments of this video. She is super interesting to figure out. I know a lot of us have been really brewing and playing tons of Rogue. So drop in the comments if you have any advice for other players picking up this character, and we'll see you next time. Peace.